Good afternoon, this is Time with PIAC. Today we will delve into one of the most strategic sectors of Ghana's economy, that is the upstream oil and gas industry, where exploration and production take place. This sector has seen significant progress over the years, with landmark discoveries like the Jubilee, the 10 and Sankofa fields drawing global attention and billions of dollars in investment. But in a rapidly changing global energy landscape where competition for capital is intense and the energy transition is gaining momentum, the big questions we must ask are: 1. What makes Ghana an attractive destination for upstream investments? Are we doing enough to sustain the interest of existing investors while drawing in new ones? And how can policy, innovation, and collaboration shape the future of our oil and gas sector? We will unpack the issues shortly and attempt to get some solutions in this edition of Time with PIAC. So whether you are an investor, a policymaker, a student of energy economics, or simply someone curious about Ghana's upstream petroleum sector, you are in the right place. We'll get into the conversation shortly. Joining me today, we have Mr. Christopher Pokunyaku. He's a PIAC member representing Gaiti, and Mr. Noble Waja, a past chairperson of PIAC. Hello, gentlemen. You are welcome to Time with PIAC.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for having us, and it's a real pleasure to be on this set of yours.
I hope you're doing well.
Very, very well. Your good self?
I'm very well. How about you, Noble?
Yeah, very well as well, and thank you for bringing us.
Great. So we'll get into our conversation shortly, and today we are looking at attracting and sustaining investment in our upstream petroleum industry. But before we get into the details of how we have fared and all of that, I would just want to take some brief opening statements from you. What is the state of our upstream oil and gas sector?
Okay. Maybe I'll take a first bite at this particular cherry, if you'd allow, Mr. Waja.
Sure.
All right. So it appears we are a bit of on a decline. Not really a bit. We're actually on a decline in terms of our production numbers. After we hit the zenith of production sometime in 2019, it's always been on a downward trend. And I think last year we did around 48.25 million barrels of oil. On the gas front, it's been of a bit of a topsy-turvy, a bit up and down in terms of our gas production, but generally, again, we've not had any new PA being signed since 2018. So generally, we would say that the oil and gas sector is one that has been a bit stagnant as far as the sign of PAs, that's the production agreements, are concerned. And as far as the production is concerned, again, we are a bit on a downward trend, all pointing to the fact that there is limited investment within the space in the last few years.
I'm sure your submission, you were referring to petroleum agreements and not the production.
No, petroleum agreement.
Petroleum agreement.
Petroleum agreement. Yeah, thank you. That's the PA. Correct. Yeah.
So, Noble, would you want to make some contribution to?
Well, I think there is nothing more to add, but just to say that being on the decline is also a product of what we've been told in the past. When we found oil, all the assessments, the initial assessments at the time made us aware that as we proceed or we journey into the oil, we will start facing some level of decline. And by 2025, it will hit us more. And worse, by 2035, we might as well say goodbye to oil. So I think it is the rhythm that is being played or that we are seeing is a replica of what we've been told beginning the extraction in 2007.
But following on from where you left off, Noble, so it's more like a usual or like an expected phenomenon that we are actually witnessing a decline at this stage?
Well, probably the stage is too early, but the generality of expectation of a decline is not in doubt. If the science and the economics of the time is something we have to go by, then it is something we have to expect. But that notwithstanding, if we do more about our investment, probably this will not be the stage for us to be facing this level of decline.
And I'm sure we'll get into some solutions as the conversation progresses. But post-commercial oil discovery 2007, post-production 2010,
we would not say that the story has been gloomy. We definitely have chalked some successes. So what are some of the major milestones that we can point to in our industry post 2010?
So for me, the standout achievement will be the our gas processing plants that we built on the back of our oil and gas sector. It was not just a facility to be able to help in the evacuation of gas, but it also helped in giving us energy, because today the gas that we get from our oil fields is what we use, quite a bit of it in producing energy for this country. And the good thing is that as we got that gas, it's sort of fed into the tariff that we pay in our various homes. Because if you depend on fossil fuel in energy production, it's more expensive compared to using gas. So we also felt the impact of it in our homes in the form of lower tariffs. Of course, not everyone will agree with me in terms of how much we are paying now, but generally, if you are using gas in energy generation, it is relatively cheaper compared to using the traditional fossil fuel. So that is one of the standout feats for us as far as we are concerned in the oil and gas space.
Nabu?
Yeah, I think that is some point, and also that's what he has said. I would describe it as the solid standout elements.
Yeah.
What we have also done, which are the soft ones, are the laws that we put in place, because law itself is an instrument for development. So to journey into the oil business, we will have to create that kind of environment to partner with investors to deal with the oil production. And I think that the enactment of the PRMA itself is something we have to hail and be very happy with. The exploration and production policy that came on Upstream is also very useful, because if you look at the PRMA, it's talking about envisioning a situation where Ghana will be on top of its oil production through the instrumentality of GNPC.
But in terms of local capacity, in terms of infrastructure for oil production and all of that, what can we actually point to in terms of milestones or achievements?
No, I mean, we've done a lot, particularly because of how, again, we went about it in terms of the PRMA that Mr. Waja referred to, because we're able to sequester the funds and then have an eye on what we are going to use those funds for. So it became like a dedicated source of funding for the kind of infrastructure priorities that we have as a country. And again, the Terminal 3 project, the airport Terminal 3, quite a lot of the money that was used in financing that project came from the oil and gas revenues that we get. Quite recently, the flyover too that we built around the East Legon stretch into the Burma camp or Tema end of it. Also, a bit of the money from our oil and gas resources is what we use for it as well. And when you go around the most of our communities, most of our oil and gas producing areas, you find a number of projects that are dotted within those communities. Again, all on the back of the extraction of our oil resources, just to be able to improve upon the lives of people. So, in a sense, we've all benefited from the extraction of this revenue in one way or the other. And again, maybe the free SHS policy of the previous government, quite a chunk of the money that was used in funding that project, again, came from the oil and gas revenues as well. So if you look at it, both at the micro and the macro level, we've had a lot of impact that we can point to.
No, but let me come to you. We are gradually getting into the cracks of our discussion today. How are we going to attract and sustain the investments that we actually attract? But over the years, how has the investment climate into the sector been like?
From the onset, Ghana was became a natural investment destination for the oil companies or maybe oil partners, for the simple reason that we had a fledgling democracy environment which is a bit friendly, or is friendly, if I should say so, to companies and business environment. So that itself was the starting point. And at the time, and also because of the quality of our oil, it was a tasty resource for the business climate at the time. But as we proceed, at the time, nobody was too much talking about this energy transition and other dynamics that has occasioned from the start of our production. So it is important that we move at pace with changing trends. As we sit now, we are hit with the fact that we are declining, as my colleague has earlier alluded to. So it means that we need to take certain steps. We cannot be always dance. We cannot be in the how do I call it in the situation saying that Ghana is the fledgling democracy. People are happy with us, but we need to do something to realize the what we need to pick from the situation now. So I think we need to do something as a country. First, we need to be monitoring the trends and also attract new investors through a review of some of the policy instruments that we have. Investments, climate must be re-looked at in order to attract more partners.
So, Chris, I'll throw the same question to you.
So, like you rightly pointed out, the landscape has changed quite markedly in the last few years. In the past, we'll not talk about West Africa in particular even being a notable region as far as the oil and gas sector is concerned, except for our big brother Nigeria, that was the standout producer. Most of us in the sub-region were not known for oil and gas production, but as we speak today, right along the coast from Ghana all the way to Senegal, you have a number of projects coming up along all of that space. So it's making it more competitive as we speak today, and because of the discoveries that are being made from Senegal to Mauritania, and even in some countries in the eastern part of Africa, that is East Africa, it means that we need to really position ourselves to be very competitive, just to be able to get the attention of investors. So it's not as business as usual as we had it when we started actively some few years ago. So I would say that the landscape has changed quite markedly in the last few years.
Is our industry still attractive?
That's an interesting question. Because, of course, then it becomes a very empirical question that we need to look at. Maybe on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe I'll put it at 5, because we still have the companies still operating here. They are still injecting money into their businesses. So to an extent, it's very it's still attractive, but will it sweep investors off their feet? Maybe no.
No. Is our industry still attractive?
Yeah, it's a yes and no to some extent. It depends on the size and the take of the particular coin. For instance, a company like ExxonMobil will not find it attractive because they will rate our blocks as too small for their interests. So it's the investment capacity of the company that makes. But for some others, they will find it interesting because of the capacity, the financial capacity, or the investment. How do I call it? That they want to pump into it. So it's the size of your investment and the strength of your company, the largeness and all that. So for people like ExxonMobil and the Shells and the rest, they might not find it attractive. So it's a yes and no thing. It's an issue of scale.
So if you are just joining us, this is Time with PIAC, and today we are looking at attracting and sustaining investments in Ghana's upstream oil and gas sector. And my guests are Mr. Christopher Pokunyaku is a PIAC member, and Mr. Noble Waja, a past PIAC member. So far, we have been trying to give an overview of how our industry is, or how the industry appears in terms of investments, and whether we are actually doing enough to attract and sustain the investments that we are actually looking forward to. So, Chris, in your earlier submission, you mentioned that the last time we signed the Petroleum agreements was in 2018. Is it something we should be worried about?
Yes, I mean, ordinarily you have to be worried about it. Of course, we don't expect to sign PAs every day or every year. But naturally, if for this period of time you've not had a new PA, what essentially means is that the pipeline of projects that need to be developed, right, for you to be able to sustain the oil production, that's not going to happen. And like Mr. Raja rightly explained, the oil we are producing is a depletable resource. So as we take more out of it without necessarily developing a new pipeline to replace whatever we are taking up, eventually we'll be faced with a scenario where we'll come to zero production. So it's always important that we attract investors and get to the stage where a new PA can be signed.
Okay, so Mr. Waja, based on your CSO experiences in other countries who are also into resource management, how does Ghana compete with these other countries in terms of investments?
Investment climate in Ghana is similar to what is happening in terms of interest in the resource by the companies and other countries. The companies that are of interest to Ghana are also having footprints in other parts of Africa anyway. Like we have Eni here, they are also in Cote d'Ivoire. So it is about the same in terms of their interests and establishing their footprints around the continent. The continent itself has become of interest to the oil majors. That one, there is no doubt about it. So you can expect that they will be elsewhere. And then recently, even in Namibia, they are making footprints there. So it's about the same thing all over. And CSOs rising are also learning a lot from the Ghana experience, because you can understand that we have taken a very good lead in terms of mobilizing ourselves to discuss or to shape how government policy should look like in the context of making oil more a blessing to the country. So the Ghana's experience is making waves, I must say. In Uganda, they had recourse to learn from the CSO's platform on oil and gas, and others are even still making approach. Recently, I was in Senegal. Similar approaches have been made for us to support them in giving them advice and guidance on how to organize themselves.
So if you look at the numbers and even the volume of activity, you see that Ghana appears to be lagging relative to these other countries. So for instance, we have ENI in Ghana, and ENI also is in Cote d'Ivoire, of course. And you look at the volume of investments that ENI has injected into these two countries. What is happening in Cote d'Ivoire is way above what we are getting in Ghana. For instance, in the last report that we got from the Petroleum Commission, ENI's expenditure was targeted more, of course, at its exploration activities within the Cape 3 Points area. But in Cote d'Ivoire, it was a lot of money, that like several billions of dollars that they injected into the development of their fields. And again, they even went into a production sharing agreement, if my recollection is right, with the Ivorian government, again, to be able to develop some particular blocks that they have identified. So you see a flurry of activities happening in Cote d'Ivoire, next door neighbor Cote d'Ivoire, as compared to Ghana. So if you look at it on that particular basis, then you would say that as a country, our competitiveness or our lure to investors has sort of dimmed a bit, given what's happening. So that is the crux of the advocacy that PIAC has been putting out, that we need to position ourselves again as an attractive destination for investors by tweaking a few things here and there, as Mr. Raja pointed to.
So, Chris, I think the purpose of this discussion is to try to come up with solutions, and not just to lament the fact that we are not really doing well in terms of our investment climate. But what role does government policy actually play in attracting and sustaining these investments? Okay.
So for investors, I mean, again, the global lexicon or the global jargons that we put out as far as attracting investment is concerned are just two words that typically we use. One, investment is determined by the geology. Two, is determined by policy. And the good thing is that even policy can impact on the geology in terms of de-risking it. So from the government side of things, we need to be able to attract companies to come in and do exploration, right? It's only when we do the exploration then we can make a commercial find or not. So the first thing then is, how do we attract capital, risky capital, to come in and do this activity? The first thing I'll talk about is what we call the infrastructure-led exploration, right? Where the government itself or a state agency can take the lead in providing basic infrastructure to support the investment that's going to come in by the private investor. And when we do this, what that would do for us is that it helps in terms of lowering the cost of exploration as far as that space is concerned. And secondly, too, investors will look for certainty. They will look for predictability. That when they come in, you are not going to change the laws to make them worse off. So again, the government should help us with a very stable, predictable environment. If there's a need for you to tweak or change a law, it doesn't hurt to call back the same investors into a conversation where both parties can agree on a way for it. That gives the investor some level of comfort that even if there's a need to change things, my view will be sought, I'll be consulted, and that helps.
No, but what are some of the challenges that investors are facing in trying to enter into our upstream oil and gas sector?
The challenges are several. The issue of block, how do I call it?
Size of blocks.
Size of blocks is an issue for some of the investors, especially the major players. If the block is too small, it's not of investment interest to those who can leverage big capital, like ExxonMobil, like I mentioned earlier on. And of course, there are a few. We have also been hit with some level of disputes over time now, and that is not also too juicy for investors. When there's a seemingly, if the country, the investment destination like Ghana or the investment area is associated with conflict, then it's not very good for capital to thrive. And I think that is something that is emerging, which has to be addressed. Of course, recently we also had this. The issues of dispute is not only even within, but we have also the external ones where Ghana has to juggle some issues with Cote d'Ivoire over the maritime boundary settlement and all that. That is also not too a good grounds for capital to move. So I think these things are very difficult, are emerging trends that we have to find a way of addressing. And again, even our own internal judicial systems are things that companies will want to watch how fair, transparent, and swift we dispatch justice. Because workers for company, those who are promoting the labor or contributing to the company labor, can also get entangled with our laws. How do we dispense it fairly and in a just manner for those type of things? So I think that these are some of the things that we need. But more importantly, the bidding process, which we said was transparent and open, that at the same time was subjected to ministerial discretion. It's like two things at the same time, which that is like, I don't think that is a very good investment environment where you claim that you are using open bidding system for attracting the resources. Then you also subject the same thing to ministerial discretion. That is a bit on the downside.
Chris, are there some other challenges that...
Just around, again, the issues around the bidding. It's been at a relatively slow pace in the last few years. So if we can get that accelerated a bit, again, it puts the country on a competitive footing again. Then the other one that I want to highlight again is the relationship that our regulators will tend to have with the oil and gas producing companies. So when I talk about relationships, so for instance, how GRA will work or will liaise with these companies, it has a lot of implications for these entities. If the relationship is acrimonial, or it's just a matter of we can't have a very honest, open conversation about things, and we always have to resort to the law courts to try and resolve our issues. It all adds up to a certain reputation as far as the country is concerned, which generally will be negative and therefore discourage investments as well. So those are the two things I wanted to highlight in addition to what Mr. Waja has eloquently explained.
So Chris, currently there are talks about energy transition. Has that shift got any implication for our industry in terms of investments?
Yes, it does. And then again, that's a very pertinent question you've asked. Because simply the transition is, as the like has to explain, is a move from one form of energy to the other. Currently, we are heavily dependent on fossil fuel for our energy generation purposes, right? And as you generate power or energy from fossil fuel, it comes with a lot of CO2, and that CO2 also contributes to accelerating climate change. So if we can scale back on the CO2 emission rate, then it means that if I slow down climate change, then we can have our world in a better position like we all want. So our greatest threat is with the crude oil that we produce, because currently gas is considered as a transition fuel. So gas will still be produced within this particular phase. But if what's happening globally in terms of scaling back in investments in crude oil production, it truly goes to or it happens as expected, then what that means is that they can't be starved of investments within our oil and gas sector. And invariably, it means that the volume of oil that we're going to produce will also decline. So yes, it has very, very grave implications for us as a country.
So, gentlemen, as we wrap up our conversation today, I would want us to leave our viewers with specific recommendations or solutions. So I'll start with Noble. What are the two topmost things that government has to do to attract and sustain investments in our upstream oil and gas industry?
We have become aware that our data quality is not too attractive at this time. So the country must move a step to, by that I'm talking about GNBC, has worked hard to update their data integrity so that companies will understand, will have a confidence in our data. So that is one of the reasons they are a bit of shifted, if I should say so. And I think that what that the news of our data quality at this crisis time where there are other investment estimations. If your data quality is not top notch, you don't expect everybody to come closer to you. So we know that the energy transition has implications for strangling of the resource. So in that way, to get it out, it means you will have to do something about your tax reduce, and either incentives that matter to production. So, like I said, that our law is an instrument for development. So as we progress, your laws should be made for man or for the country. So as we progress, and we have every reason to believe that we need to review some of our tax regimes, so be it. And I think that should be a fair thing to do.
So it is important that within the thinking or within the context of the possibility of a stranded assets, which can be imposed by the energy transition regime, it goes to support the idea that we also have to review our fiscal regimes if we have to continue to attract investors into the business field. Otherwise, because the stranded asset will not affect only governments or states, it will also affect the company. The stranded asset has implications for drifting investment away from the resource entirely anyway. So if we have to pump more, then it means we have to do something about our fiscal regimes in order to attract investors.
Chris, two topmost actions.
So I would want to start, of course, that's one thing that I see happening, that if we can go ahead with the infrastructure-led exploration, where part of the initial cost of the infrastructure that is required, to help these companies to come in is borne by the government or by GMPC, it lowers the cost of capital that is required, and also accelerates the development of the project. So that is one key thing I like to see happening in our country. And the second one has to do with a major challenge that currently we have. The gas processing plants that we have now, it's almost at full capacity now. So what it means is that if we have a lot more gas projects coming up, for instance, on our current fields, we do a lot more injection, and that also impacts on our ability to recover crude oil as well. So if we can get a second gas processing plant, which the government has committed to, I guess that will be a major incentive also to invest it. So already the government has announced that is going to do it. So we just want to urge the government to, as a matter of priority, also to focus on the delivery of this particular infrastructure for the country and for the sector.
And that brings us to the end of today's important discussion on attracting and sustaining investment in Ghana's upstream petroleum industry. A big thank you to my guest, Mr. Christopher Pokunyaku, PIAC member representing Gaiti, and Mr. Noble Waja, a past PIAC chair, for sharing such valuable insights on how Ghana can position itself as a competitive and stable destination for upstream petroleum investments, from regulatory frameworks and fiscal incentives to the future of energy transition. Today's conversation has made it clear that attracting investment is only the first step. Sustaining it requires consistency, transparency, and innovation. To our audience, thank you for tuning in and being part of this dialogue. Remember that PIAC remains open to your conversation, so you can contact us via any of our channels and we would respond to further questions and comments that you have. Remember that your voice matters on issues related to the management and use of petroleum revenue, so let your voice be heard. Until next time, I'm Jessica Champon, and this has been Time with PIAC.